That's it. We're going live. We did it. We're live. Okay. All right. Welcome, everybody. Gene here, hosting the Rebel Capitalist Pro, I guess, behind the paywall podcast with today with Jason Hartman, real estate. We're going to be speaking real estate and single family in the United States for the most part. And Jason, I know you just got back from a badass vacation, so we've had to punt this podcast or at least this Q&A a couple of times. Because of life. So it's good to see you.
Thank you all for waiting for me. Yeah, I was 5 weeks in Europe. That was my longest trip ever by a week. I've been a month in Europe before, but this one was 5 weeks. So,
how'd it go?
But it's good to be back and get back to work, man. I tell you, I could never retire. I mean, it's like, it's okay for a little while. I try to not think about work sometimes. And it's just, you just want to be engaged in life, man, and intellectually stimulated. And at least for me,
that's how you enjoy what you're doing, right? When you can't get away from it and you're supposed to. Yeah.
But you really don't want to get away from it.
You don't want to get away from it. You're just like, I like it too much. It's a bit of a drug.
Yeah, that's true.
For sure. Well, it's good to see you, buddy. Before we get into the questions today, I believe you had a couple of slides you wanted to share.
Yeah, let me share a couple of data points that I think are really interesting. So here comes Gene. Hang on. Oh, no, wrong. Zoom and StreamYard just work differently, so.
Not fair.
There we go. Coming up. Here you go. Okay.
There it is. All right. Yeah, we've added it to the stream.
So first off, let's start with housing inventory. And, the one thing I want to refresh people's mind on is it is amazing to me that this asset class is so resilient. It is truly shocking. I mean, we have had the fastest, steepest interest rate increases in history. And real estate came off year over year by 0.9%. That's it. And housing affordability has just plummeted, yet inventory of houses for sale has barely increased. I mean, it is just shocking that in this kind of situation, we still actually have a housing shortage by a long shot. So let's take a look at some of the stats. Right now, we're sitting at 465,000 homes for sale in the United States. 465,000. Remember, normal is about 1.2 million. So these are year over year stats. And you can see that, 2019, for example, inventory was quite a bit higher. And that was still a housing shortage market. Okay. So, there was a slight shortage then, not as much as now, but now we only have 465,000 homes for sale. Wow. That's 2% lower than last year, not higher. Inventory last year at this time was 2% higher. It's now lower than it was at this time last year because, of course, real estate is a seasonal business, right?
Right.
So inventory is slightly lower than it was a year ago at this time. It's still about 700,000 homes below normal, okay? Demand still exceeds supply. And my friend Mike at Altos Research predicts that we will end the year with 15% less inventory than we did at the end of last year.
Is that a result of people taking their houses off the market, or these are just houses selling that reduce it by 15%?
Well, demand has obviously declined because affordability has declined so much. But it's not a result of people taking their house off the market. It's a result of people never putting their house on the market. And I say that's going to be their thinking for a long time into the future because they have these incredibly cheap mortgages.
Sure.
I'll give you just one example because it just mirrors kind of the situation. So part of my 5-week trip to Europe was a cruise on Celebrity Cruises. Okay. So we're on this beautiful brand new cruise ship, hanging out by the pool one day. I'm talking to a couple of guys who were brothers. And, as soon as they learned about my YouTube channel and podcast, they started hitting me up with all these real estate investing questions, right? And just, where's the market going? What's going on? Yada, 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 right? And they one of them says that he and his wife can afford a larger house, and they like to move. They'd like to buy a better house. They can afford it. They can qualify. They've got the money, no problem. And I said, well, what's stopping you? And he said, well, we've got this house we have now, and we just kind of like, it's hard to justify the payment on the new house. And I said, what's the interest rate on your existing home?
It's like 3%.
You ready for this? 2.6%.
Yeah, free money. Yeah.
So how does that couple go from 2.6% to 7%?
They don't.
Like, how do they almost triple the price of that mortgage, right? And they just can't justify it.
Yeah.
So they're just staying put. And if they don't stay put, even though they can afford to move, if they don't stay put, they're going to keep their house as a rental and not sell it. So they'll create no new inventory, but they will use up existing inventory, right? But at the same time, the supply of rentals is actually pretty scarce too, okay? Now, there are some markets that have been over Airbnb'd, like Phoenix, okay, where you live.
Yep.
And those definitely have a bit of an oversupply of the short-term rental market for sure. Well, not a bit, but a lot of oversupply of short-term rentals. And I have always said that Airbnb has never been through a real recession. COVID was not a real recession. That was a weird type of temporary recession. Okay. But Airbnb, the supply of what I call non-primary beds in the United States and in the world has dramatically increased with Airbnb, right? Mm-hmm. And that was fine in a booming economy, but now things are changing, right? And so it's different now. But this market has just proven to be surprisingly resilient. Take a look at this. Put my screen back on if you would. Look at these interest rate hikes, okay? I mean, here we have the most recent one, almost 5 points, okay? And here we have some past rate hikes. So the fastest, the steepest, the most ridiculous interest rate increases, yet real estate has proven to be an amazingly resilient asset class. So has, it's not an asset class, but some stocks have surprisingly done fairly well through this. But the labor market, surprisingly well. And I know what everybody's saying. Well, Jason, just wait till everybody gets laid off. Well, I don't know, maybe. But they're still going to need a place to live, and they've still got a super cheap mortgage. 25% of them in the entire country have a mortgage at or below 3%. 65% have a mortgage at or below 4%. And 42% of all homes are free and clear. Where does the distress come from when you have that situation? Just take a look at this. Okay, let me show you this chart. Okay, so the first one, this one, okay. This is, look at the payment to income ratio, right? Obviously, affordability is going down. But instead of the market crashing, which is the way most linear-minded people think of it, they think, oh, well, if people can't afford the house, then everything's a disaster, right? No, that's not the way it works, folks. People accept less. That's what they have to do. They just go out into the marketplace and they're disappointed. And they say, gosh, we can't get that house we could have purchased 2 years ago. Okay, tough luck. Grow up. That's life. So they just buy the thing they can afford, or they rent the thing they can afford. That's just, people just capitulate. That's what they have to do. The national delinquency rate fell by 11 basis points in May. Okay, borrowers with a single payment past due improved. Okay, so like it's getting better. Okay, serious delinquencies slowed nationally, and just look at this: mortgage delinquencies declined in May. They didn't rise; they're declining. Okay, here's the chart from Black Knight. Okay, I mean, if you want to have a real estate crash, you must have a giant number of distressed homeowners. Mm-hmm. You're never going to have a crash unless you have that. It's the one required ingredient. It's like, if you bake a cake, you got to have flour. like it's required. Okay, right. Well, unless it's flourless cake, I guess. I don't know. I don't bake cakes, but you know what I mean.
I know what you mean.
So
Takes all
yeah,
those ingredients. But so with respect to like it seems to me like it's going to be it's not going to be a national. If there ever comes another correction, it's not going to be one of these national kind of Scheller index broad
yeah.
crashes. This might be a complete regional thing when I don't know when this will happen, but if there's a point in the future where unemployment rates get too high, people get too desperate, then they have no choice to sell, that might trigger some correction, I guess, in real estate in
Look,
pockets.
what everybody always forgets is that we have this centrally planned economy, and the central planners react.
They're going to print.
They don't want the economy to crash, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they'll push us into it a little bit to adjust the dials they need to adjust, like too much inflation, right? They're going to push us into a recession. I don't doubt that. Okay. But they will act and they will correct. I mean, even Ken McElroy, right? He said this to me. When COVID hit, he was making these videos that were like, he said, write this year off. Okay, it's over. This year is over. The market's going to be a disaster. It's going to crash, yada, yada. And he was obviously wrong, right? And he said to me after that, he said, I didn't count on the Fed's response.
I think that's everybody felt that way. Yeah. Nobody expected them to.
You can't just look at like people losing jobs and think, oh, well, if they lose their job, then what? Do you think the Fed's going to sit around and do nothing? Of course they're going to do something, right? I mean,
I think everybody's kind of scarred by the GFC where the banks got bailed out, but nobody else did.
Yeah.
And it
was
socialism, a really bad,
terrible.
Right. And I think everybody had that kind of feeling coming into this next one. We're like, oh yeah, it's going to be more of the same. They're going to let everything fail except for the people at the top, and unemployment's going to go up. You know how it is, but it didn't. Yeah. Obviously didn't. And
I know.
It worked out in our favor.
It's kind of a funny part of human nature, and I noticed this within myself too, because I used to really, read all the zero hedge articles. This is 15 years ago, and read all of the doom and gloom news, and I almost like wanted it to crash, And I wanted things to get worse. I don't know why, but it's a
like
weird thing in human nature. Like we want to be right about this stuff.
Yeah.
And what we just don't count on is that every single day people are going out working. They're trying to improve their lives. I mean, you got billions of people doing this. The momentum of that, they're not going to be denied.
Good point.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like they're going to make their way in the world, and that's going to stimulate the economy. Okay.
Yeah. Despite all the adversity that people will overcome it. Yeah. It makes a lot of sense.
So look, the bottom line is, look, the crash bros, they'll be right someday, but they're
not today,
not anytime soon. I mean, it's just, there's just no data to support their views at all.
Yeah. So what's your take with respect to real estate investing in this kind of environment? What do good deals look like nowadays? And I know we can't take the last.
They don't look as good as they used to. I'll tell you.
Obviously not, but not taking those into consideration. Like what did it look like back in the day when we didn't, when 6% were normal rates? I mean, it's not your first rodeo at 6%, right? 5, 6, 7%.
No, but the prices were much lower back then.
Okay, so is that what needs to happen now? Is like we need to see a price appreciation change, and you're saying coming anytime soon. So what's that look like for investing moving in the next 10 years?
Well, affordability. I mean, look, affordability. I've been saying this. I've been beating this drum for a couple of years now. The real estate is actually still relatively cheap. I know people hear that and they think, "Oh, you're out of your mind, man. Are you kidding me? Are you, how much acid are you taking?" Right? No, it is. I mean, just go back. I mean, look, let's share my screen again, will you?
Yep. Bringing it up. Here we go. There you go.
Okay. So look at this chart. This is the national payment to income ratio. Okay. So, versus the 30-year fixed rate mortgage. Mm-hmm. Okay. And that payment to income ratio is pretty bad right now. But you got to remember something. The house has changed. This house in, the 90s, it was a smaller, crappier house than it is today. The house has gotten bigger. Since 1970, the average house was like 1,500 square feet. Now it's almost 2,400 square feet.
Are you assuming everybody's buying new houses with that
Well,
statement?
no, but those new houses fall into the inventory mix,
I
right?
see. Okay.
So, there's, I mean, most in a normal market, most sales are resales, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And so you have most of the houses selling being resale houses, but those new houses, if they're purchased, in the early part of the decade, they start falling into the market and they become used houses, right?
Mm-hmm.
After they're resold. And so it's just the point that the typical house just keeps getting bigger and better, of course, right? So they're not buying the same house. It would be like comparing the Honda Civic that my mother bought. I remember when I was a little kid, my mother bought the cheapest, crappiest Honda Civic because it's all she could afford. It was this crappy blue Honda Civic. It had no power steering, no air conditioning. It was a stick shift. It didn't even have a radio because she couldn't afford to buy a radio. We just thought, we'll just bring the little transistor radio in the car and play it, right? But now the cheapest, crappiest car you can buy is dramatically nicer. It has airbags. It's an automatic. Like, I don't think you can buy a car without power steering and air conditioning anymore. Of course, you can't buy a car without electric windows. So it's a different car.
Yeah, good
right?
point.
That's
Yeah.
what people don't realize. They say,
hit
well,
on
cars have gotten
exactly.
more expensive. It's a different fucking car.
Right.
Like,
Yeah. Sure.
yeah, it's just weird. People just don't get it.
So it's more like you have to take into consideration the additional value that's naturally baked into the asset that you normally wouldn't have purchased, and you got to take the price into account to really understand.
That's true. But also you have to remember that even if the market continues to soften, right?
Mm-hmm.
Say that, now it's going back up, right? Prices are appreciating again slightly as they are, right? But say it reverses course and say the market goes down in value. Remember, 10% in price is equal to 1% in mortgage. That's the same payment essentially, right? So prices got to come down by 10% if rates go up by 1% to make it the same.
Okay.
Or vice versa, right?
So $100,000 house.
What is
$30,000?
How would you get a house for $100,000?
To make the math simple, I can understand what's going on.
$1 million house. Go ahead.
$1 million house makes more sense, but $100,000 house at 2020, I could get it for $100,000. Even as an investor, I got it for like 4%. On my so you're suggesting that $100,000 house would have to go down 90 to 90,000, and I'd get like a 5% loan. 80,000, and then it would be like a 6% loan. 70,000, and it would be a 7% loan. Is that right? Or am I getting the math wrong?
Well, I'm just saying if mortgage rates drop 1%. Then everybody got 10% more affordability in price. They can spend 10%.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Okay.
Now I get
if mortgage rates go up 1%, they got to spend 10% less.
Got it. Yeah.
Okay. To be the same. That's probably the best way to put it.
That makes ton of sense.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
But here's the thing is that real estate is multi-dimensional asset class as an investor. So when affordability declines as it has been, and it's really not very good anymore at all, right? Although historically over the long trend, it's not that bad. That's my point. Compared to recently, it's terrible, awful. Like, during the COVID era, affordability was fantastic. It was like incredible what you could buy. And of course, we know what happened. The market, pushed prices into this savage market. Okay. But it's down now. So what does that do? It forces people to stay in the renter pool. If they're would-be home buyers, they're going to stay as renters. Yeah. And so that puts upward pressure on rents. No, it doesn't happen right away. You have to wait this stuff out. It takes about, 18 to 24 months to work its way through the system, all of these things, right? And the people who get burned are the people who can't hold on during that transition period. Okay. And remember something else. All of these rent surveys, they're mostly weighted toward apartments, large multifamily apartments. Okay. Which a lot of new inventory there has come onto the market, and those are softening quite a bit. But the single family home rents are not softening very much. Okay.
Makes sense. So with respect to investing today, like what's a good deal look like? And I know you have stuff sitting on,
Thank you.
sitting on your inventory. Like what's a good deal look like today?
Let me look at, I've been in the business of helping investors buy properties for 18 years now, exclusively working with investors. Before that, I was in traditional real estate where I helped home buyers and homeowners. I mean, I had a lot of investor clients then too, but it was mostly a traditional real estate business.
Yeah.
And I can tell you, I'll just give you a comparison from a rent to value ratio perspective. In 2012, I remember we did a property tour in Missouri, okay? And we were looking at properties that people could buy that had a rent to value ratio of up to 1.8.
Wow.
Now, what does that mean? That means a $100,000 house. And yes, we did have those back then. Okay, this was 11 years ago.
Yeah.
Okay. You could buy a $100,000 property through our network. Okay. I sold those properties to clients, right? And you could rent it for $1,800 a month. Insane. It was incredible. Okay. Now, assuming a $100,000 property even existed, which it really doesn't, like it wouldn't be one that I'd recommend buying.
Right.
Okay. I mean, it exists, but I wouldn't buy it. Okay. But just to keep the math simple, that $100,000 house will rent for about 800. It's 0.8.
Yeah.
0.8 versus 1.8. Now, 1.8 really was an anomaly. Okay. That was like too good to be true. But lots of properties sold at, 1.3, 1.4 rent to value. So in that example, the $100,000 house would rent for $1,300 to $1,400 a month. It's definitely not as good as it used to be. Rents always lag prices. The prices will go up first, and then the rents take a while to follow. Why is that? Well, think about it. Anybody who's like lived in a neighborhood where they're watching the real estate, everybody's like watching all the properties selling. In a hot market, they see that every new listing is higher priced than the last one. And every new listing sells for more than the last one because the market's hot, right? And prices are going up really fast. But the rentals in that same neighborhood, those leases generally renew one time per year. And that landlord will maybe raise the rent, maybe not. Okay. And so rents are always much slower than prices. And we've had a lot of price appreciation. The rents are still catching up. And I tell you, folks, I've got more experience than anybody in this.
Yeah.
Rents are too cheap. Rents are going up.
Yeah.
Now, there may be some little part where for, like a short time, you'll see some articles that say, oh, rents are softening or something. I look at macro trends. The macro trend is rents are going up.
That's the
because
idea.
They're way too cheap.
Yeah. So figure out where people are moving, the trend, and then get in front of that, right? Yeah. So you're kind of cornering those markets, right?
Yeah. Well, we think we are.
Yeah.
I hope we're right.
You get a lot of people exiting, like California and all these blue states, and they're going to red states now to get a little taste of freedom again. And so you're kind of parking yourself. So would it be more like, okay, if we can get a single family in the 0.8 or, with an RV of 0.8 or something like that, understanding that maybe in the next couple of years, we're going to get back to that one again, just based off rent increases and stagflation, and then the amortization schedule too at that, right? So you're constantly paying down that interest on your loan. Eventually,
well, the tenant's paying it for you.
Or the tenant's paying for it, so
they're paying the principal on the amortized loan. Yes.
Right. So over time, it's starting to work out in that way as well.
Look, so I mean, the bottom line that people have got to remember is, no rational person really looking at the data can deny that there is a shortage of housing versus the population and versus household formation.
Yeah.
No one can deny that there's a giant demographic cohort, actually two of them, the millennials and the Gen Zers, that are moving through their primary household formation years or coming right into them.
Right.
I mean, it doesn't matter like what the prices are doing or the rents are doing so much. Is it just people need houses?
Sure.
Like, keep it simple.
Yeah.
Okay. There's not enough houses. There's too many people. Something's going to give.
Something's going to give.
And you know what's going to give?
prices on
Higher
the
prices,
rent.
higher rents.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, it seems to me like going back to 2012, I think that's what you
And
said.
everybody calls me a permabull, but I'm not a permabull.
Good
During
guy.
COVID, I was on go listen to the podcast during COVID where I
Yeah.
told people not to buy a house from us.
Right. I remember
Like
those.
it's
Yeah.
recorded. It's
Yeah, I
date
remember.
stamped. Go and listen to
Right.
it.
Hey, so investors back in 2012, it seemed to me like if you wanted to get rich in the real estate investing business with a 1.8 RV ratio, that was the time to get into it.
Well, of course.
What about today though? Like today, the investor has changed. It's got to be more like, hey, you want to protect and preserve your purchasing power, maybe consider real estate. Don't get into the single family home real estate investing business right now if you want to get rich, because you're going to put all your money into a house and make, hopefully, if you're lucky, $200 a month.
Well, hey, let me tell you something.
How does that work?
That person in 2012 that was getting, realistically, point 0.8 was, an outlier. Okay.
Yeah,
But say they were getting a 1.4 RV ratio, which we did all day long. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. That person was scared to death that the recession wasn't over.
Good point.
They were like, oh, the economy is anemic. It's so hard to get a mortgage. You couldn't get a loan. It was like so difficult to, the banks were, it was insane. It was like a cavity search to get a loan. And you could only, I'm not just exactly sure what it was in 2012, but there was a time where you could only get 2 Fannie Mae loans, then they increased it to 4. Now it's 10. Okay. So, and they were just super restrictive. So, people were scared back then. It's not, nobody went out thinking, like, oh my God, I could just get rich in real estate. I'll just buy a lot of houses with 1.4 to 1.8 RV ratio, rent to value ratio. People were fearful.
And what were they fearful of? Just unemployment, like nobody being able to pay the rent?
Yeah, they were fearful of inflation and unemployment, and we're not out of the Great Recession yet, and the global economy and everything that Zero Hedge was writing at the time. I don't know. It's like there's always something. What it comes down to, the whole like crash bro mentality. It comes down to people that basically don't have any guts. They don't have any confidence, and so they want to see misery from other people, right? They want to see it not work out because they don't have the guts to try it themselves. Okay, yeah. It's like the guy who doesn't have the confidence to go up and talk to the girl. Okay. And, we've all been there. Okay. I've been there many times myself. I'm that guy too. Okay. And, oh, she's so pretty. She won't like me, whatever. Right. And so you don't have the guts. And then what you do is you start rationalizing in your mind why she's not good. She's probably stuck up. She's this, she's that. And, everybody's getting divorced anyway. I don't want to be involved, whatever, right? Everybody's got their rationalizations. And the fact is the people who just take action are the ones that win.
Yeah, it's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. Well, hey, let's hop into some questions, buddy.
Sounds good.
Let me pull these up here. Let's see. Where's my window? All right. And thanks to everybody who submitted questions for Jason. And hey, this is one of those Q&As where the questions may be a couple months old because of the travel schedule that we've had.
You know what I find with the real estate world? The principles and questions are mostly timeless. Okay.
Yeah, that's a good point. Pretty evergreen.
They're just not that time sensitive. Yeah. If this were CNBC and we were talking about the stock market, it would really matter that we're talking in real time. But with real estate, it's just sort of such a slow moving asset class. Usually the same exact question applies.
I hear you. Okay, this one's from Ralph. He says, "Hey, Jason, hope you're having a good week. I've participated in several 1031 exchanges over the last couple of years. All worked out well. Last week, I heard about a reverse 1031 exchange. Yeah. Explain how that works."
Yeah, those are complex and expensive, but they can be done. So a 1031 exchange is where you take a property, you sell it, and then you buy a replacement property and you defer the taxable gain into the new property. It's a beautiful asset class because, in stocks or a business or precious metals or any other asset, when you sell it and you make money, you pay tax and then you take what's left over after tax, and that's what you get to reinvest.
Yeah.
With income property, you can reinvest the whole thing. So that's another beautiful feature of income property. It's the most tax favored asset class in America, and it's the most historically proven asset class in the entire world. So that's a regular exchange. So a reverse exchange is, so when you do a regular exchange, you have your relinquished property and your upleg property or replacement property that you purchase in its place, right? But with a reverse exchange, you do that backwards. You buy the upleg property or the replacement property before you sell the property you're going to relinquish.
Oh, so you can kind of post date or back date the 1031 exposed to.
So this comes up when, like, hey, oh my gosh, this property over there is a great deal. I gotta get that deal.
I can't sell this shit first,
I don't have the money.
Yeah, right.
And plus there's this other property. I don't like it very much. I want to sell this one, but I haven't sold it yet. So what you're going to do is you're basically going to have whenever you do an exchange, you use an accommodator, okay, that basically steps into your shoes and becomes the buyer and the seller. So what you do is you hire your accommodator to, instead of doing the regular forward exchange, we'll call it, or traditional exchange, you instruct them to buy the property for you. Okay. And then you sell your property you're going to relinquish. And when you sell it, you put the proceeds in their account, and then they use that money to buy the other property. And they do it in reverse. But a reverse exchange costs a lot more money. Does it? Because they have to create an LLC to buy it for you, because they're not going to be liable, right? And then they have to, they have to actually take title to that property. So it's much more expensive. Okay. But it could still be well worth it, because, I mean, you're going to pay the exchange accommodator maybe like 9 or 10 times more in fees. It's a lot more. Okay. Like 900% more. But, you can make way more money on the real estate. So, it's going to be worth it. They're not very common, but it can be done.
Interesting. Okay, cool. Let's see here. Whoops, messed that up. Okay, here we go. Let's see. What's Luke Roman? Also, Luke Roman, this guy. Okay, so Luke says, of course, that's just his thing. Okay, Luke is recommending scarce U.S. real estate, like lots, condos, homes, oceanfront, near ski resorts, national parks is a good place to park a good chunk of your money. What are your thoughts on that? That's what Luke is recommending.
I mean, certainly anything scarce is likely to be good, right? But the problem with the types of properties he's kind of recommending is, well, number one, condos have a whole host of problems.
HOAs.
I try to avoid condos. I'll never say never. Like, I would buy a condo if the deal is good enough, but it would have to be much better than the equivalent single family home, right? For me to want to buy a condo. So I don't like condos too much. And, oceanfront property or whatever else he talked about, of course, that's all great. But the problem is you can never make those deals pencil. And you want the property to be sustainable in terms of income. Hey, there's the dog. There's here. And so that's the problem. Of course, it'd be nice to own trophy properties, on the ocean front and so forth, but you just can't rent them for enough money to make them sustainable.
Also ties into the Airbnb problem too, where a lot of that inventory is they're not seeing the type of activity like they were in the past, like you're saying. Like Airbnb is seeing like in this area, it's like down by like 40%. Airbnb short-term rentals. Yep. So we deal with that too. Okay, cool. Thanks, Ralph. All right. Raul asks, hey, Jason, do you ever have concerns with the ethics of what you do for a living? There's a growing anti-landlord sentiment because investors have been buying up single-family housing, driving up the price, making it unaffordable for first-time home buyers, while raising rents because renting is now the only option for most. Now, personally, I blame the government for the negative real estate rate policy because investors are only acting logically given the circumstances of the government. that the government created. And to be intellectually hyperbolic, if the government said we'll pay $100K for each person you murder of a certain race we dislike, then no one would argue that people would only be acting
the
logically.
government has done that before, actually.
Yeah, no doubt. It's not my intention to compare being a landlord to genocide, just to point out that there are circumstances where government may create incentives that, if followed, would be unethical.
Yeah.
I watched a video replay where you expressed concern that America was becoming a nation of renters and the negative consequences of society that come with that. However, I believe your career revolves around pushing us toward that, eventually by helping investors find properties that otherwise might be affordable to first-time home buyers. There is a counterpoint that investor demand creates supply as new builds are made to meet investor demand. However, overall, investors are still a net drain on supply of homes because they always buy existing homes, or they also buy. Is there any ethical concerns?
They buy a lot of new homes, but anyway, go ahead.
I'll keep going here. Is there any ethical concerns you have with this field? What paradigm shift might change in the future to cause your concern and question your business model? No disrespect intended.
Yeah.
If I was born 10 years early, I'd have several rental properties right now instead of being a permanent renter. I will likely never be able to afford to buy a home unless I'm willing to go deep into debt and delay retirement until my 80s. I ruined my life by stupidly being born too late. Yeah, don't let that happen again. Okay.
You didn't get much of a choice in that, my friend.
Good one, Raul. Thanks, buddy, for the thoughtful.
So like Ralph, that is an easy question to answer. No, I have zero concern. I'm actually one of the suppliers of rental housing, right? Yeah. What's wrong with that? I mean, I've definitely thought about it because I definitely hear and I see the comments like on YouTube, oh, you evil landlords are ruining the world. Well, no, we're supplying rental housing.
That's why we get all the incentives we get, because we are doing a service to the public. And really, you got to blame the inflation monster on the government. You can't really knock that too much.
Oh, of course. Yeah, the government is responsible for the inflation. Governments and central banks. But just look, if you want an answer to your question, I just want you to look at the areas where there is rent control. Okay, and look at the epic disaster that is rent control, okay, where they try to circumvent the free market and landlords become disincentivized to invest in those areas. So they supply less rental housing. And tell me what the prices are like for sale and for rent in New York, San Francisco, all of California now, Oregon. Okay, all of these things will meet the same fate. That doesn't work. And just think about it this way. If you were in the desert and you were dying of thirst, if someone wanted to sell you a bottle of water, instead of for $1, which probably should have been the price, say they wanted $50 for the bottle of water, would it be worth it, right? The market has a wisdom all its own, right? Yes, you could call that price gouging, but if there's no other supply around, you had to pay that guy more money for him to bring that bottle of water to that location. Otherwise, there would be other supply, right? That's why he charged $50 for the bottle of water, because no one else was willing to do it. Right. And so the market has those checks and balances built in. It's Adam Smith's invisible hand. OK, no landlord can charge more than what the market will let them charge, because someone's going to undercut them. That's what always happens. Competitors are always trying to undercut each other. And that's what keeps the deal reasonable for the buyer, whether they be a renter or buyer. And that's what keeps their greed in check, is that beautiful free market system, that invisible hand of capitalism. So absolutely don't have any problem with what I do ethically.
Yeah, it's like everything in life. There's trade-offs. There's no perfect answer. It's like rent control is always a great example of this, right? You put rent control in a city and nobody moves because they don't ever want to lose that rent, right? So they naturally just clamp down on supply immediately, and you're like, "Oh, I didn't expect that to happen." And you're like, "Well, you think,
Gene, one of our team members, lives in San Francisco in a rent-controlled apartment. So his name is Patrick. I had him on the podcast. He's been working for us for about 7-8 years now, and he and his wife moved to San Francisco and rented the place they're still in 1997. And they have this rent-controlled Victorian place. And yes, it's a good deal, But are you really sure it's a good deal? Because at the beginning of COVID, when the interest rates just dropped precipitously, I said, Patrick, now's the time for you and Robin to go and buy a house. And he didn't do it. He couldn't justify it. He would have had 2.5 or 3% mortgage for 3 decades, that super cheap mortgage. And, they're stuck. They're trapped.
Did he latch on to that rent control price that he was having from 97? That he was like, this is too good to pass up. I'd rather just live here for $1,000 a month in San Francisco or something.
It's insane. I mean, you just that interference in the market just perverts the whole thing.
Yeah.
Okay. And here's the other thing that I'd ask: how do you know that housing is too expensive? Maybe it's too cheap. Like, how do you know that? How do you know what is the right price, right? You don't. That's the reality of it. We don't know. We don't know if a 1-bedroom condo, should be $1 million. Well, that's what it costs in Hong Kong.
Right.
Okay. Like maybe that's what it should cost in Phoenix too. I don't know. How do you know? The only way you know what anything's worth is whatever a buyer will pay for it.
Free market price discovery.
That's price discovery. When I was in real estate school, I remember the instructor saying, I was like 18 years old. Okay. So this was quite a while ago. I remember him talking about the different methods of appraisal. There's the income approach, the comparison approach, and the cost approach, right? That's the 3 ways you can appraise a property. But the ultimate appraisal is selling the property.
Yeah.
Because the buyer is the appraiser. Okay. If they're going to do it, then they're going to give you the appraisal. That's the worth of the property, is whatever someone will buy it for. So you just don't know. Like you think housing is too expensive, but you only think that because it's more expensive than it was in 1950. Like, you don't know that it's too expensive. There's no way to empirically know that. Right.
Yeah. So, yeah. It is what it is. Okay. All right, cool. Let's move on to the next one here. Who is that, Raul? Yeah.
But that's a great question. I
thanks,
really
Raul.
like it. And it's well thought out too. So thank you
good.
for the question.
Good stuff. Michael asks, hey, Jason, I believe I've heard you mention that you prefer to manage your own properties without a property manager. In my experience, there are too many frauds in the trade business, though I'm sure many are honorable. They can be hard to find. How do you find good people to work on the property and search for tenants, especially since you have properties all over the place? Additionally, how do you avoid problem tenants? I know these things don't sound exciting, but in my view, they make or break a successful real estate investor. Cheers, Michael. Absolutely. I resonate with everything he's saying here.
Yeah.
My own experience.
Listen, the biggest fraudsters and the biggest problems are the property managers, not the tenants.
Yep.
Okay. I have had like hardly any bad tenants ever, and I've had thousands of tenants by now. I don't even know how many I've had. Okay. But I've had thousands of tenants. I'm sure over the years. I mean, way over 2,000 by now, I'm sure. And folks, the tenants are rarely the problem. Okay. Most people are just good people that just want a good house to live in. And that's it. Okay. They're just not a problem that often. Okay. The problem is usually the person with a different agenda. And that's the property manager, who's this third party. Now, listen, we recommend property managers to our clients that want them. Most of our clients don't do my technique of what's called hybrid self-management. Okay, it's kind of a hybrid approach. It's not total self-management, but we teach this. It takes too long to explain. I can't explain it here, but it's great. Okay, that's the best approach. But most people don't do that. Most of our clients do use property managers. Okay, and then you've got to manage the manager, and the manager has to serve two masters because they're trying to serve you, the owner, and they're trying to serve the tenant. Okay. And they're kind of like refereeing between these two. And then they have all sorts of connections with all sorts of trades, people to fix plumbing, air conditioning, whatever's needed. Right. But the reality is they're not spending their money. They're spending your money. So look, they don't care that much because it's not their money. I mean, How do you think the government spends your money efficiently? Of course not, right? Nobody thinks that, right? You'd be delusional to think that the government spends our money efficiently. They don't care. It's not their money, right?
Yeah.
So you are going to be the best person to spend your money with these trades. How do you get good trades? Oh, there's lots of ways. Thumbtack, TaskRabbit, Yelp. I use all three of those. They're fantastic. And then people will say, well, Jason, I don't have time to manage my properties. It takes less time to do it yourself. Okay. I said on the podcast, just last week, I was talking about this. I started the podcast kind of being sarcastic, saying, oh my God, self-management, it sucks. 2 of my properties had air conditioning issues last week, and they did. This is a true story I was telling. Okay. And so I started off complaining about it. And then I told what happened. Okay. Turns out one of the tenants fixed the problem himself.
Love it. Love it.
I didn't pay a penny. Okay. Yeah. Tenant fixed the problem.
Love that guy.
Other air conditioning. I got a recommendation actually from one of our clients. Okay. One of our clients recommended the air conditioning vendor to me. Now I could have easily found one myself. Okay. Which I've done many times. But I got a recommendation and I was in Europe. So I went to their website and I just emailed them through their website, and I had them go out and diagnose the problem. And they said, hey, and I set the expectations. I said, I expect a service call to be between about $85 and $120. They said it's $125. They raise their rates in the summer in Florida. Okay?
Makes sense. Yeah.
When it's high demand, hey, it's supply and demand, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So they said it'll be $125 for the service call, but we apply that to whatever needs to be done. And then they fixed it. The tenant sent me a message on Voxer. He said, everything's fixed. I'm so happy. Thank you. And I get the bill in my email. It's $250. And then I reach out to them and I say, hey, why was it $250? Well, it needed a new capacitor or whatever, blah, blah, blah. And this vendor sounded pretty legit, and they were referred to me by someone who's used them a lot. So I pay him the $250. That whole affair took me like maybe 15 minutes.
Yeah.
That's it. Now, what if I had a property manager? Well, then the bill would have been $500.
Easy.
Okay. Right.
Yeah.
And the tenant would have been ignored. Right. And they would have been upset. Okay. And, you got to remember, every time there's a problem or a challenge, like your tenant is your customer, right? So your customer has a problem, right? Mm-hmm. And you want to help your customer get it solved. And you know what? When you pay attention to them, that's when you score points with them. And they're more likely to renew the lease, take better care of the house, agree to rent increases, et cetera, et cetera. Just take good care of them. Yeah. Okay. And, everybody's happy. It's like so little effort to self-manage your properties. It's unbelievable. It's actually less time, less effort than having a manager.
Yeah. I can experience, I've experienced that too. Like I self-manage a property in Indiana. Right. And
Indiana.
Yeah. It was after I had to fire those people because I had a $20,000 repair bill. I'm like, wait a minute, it should never got here. And that
you're the manager, right?
Same experience. Yeah. Same experience. And you had me file a thing with the attorney general and everything. So, hopefully that works out in the end. But
did that go somewhere?
Yeah, that went somewhere. Yeah. So they've reached out and stuff. We've had conversations with the Indiana attorney general, and they said it could take like 6-9 months for this to resolve. And I'm like, well, whatever. I just reported it.
File that complaint with their Department of Real Estate though as well.
Yeah, I don't know. I talked to some attorney general lawyer in the office, so it's in the right hands. Yep. Either way, the point is what you're saying is spot on. And after I removed the property manager and I've talked to the tenant directly, it's been smooth sailing across the board. She sends me money through Zelle every month, and we're in good terms.
And you don't have to wait for your money. I get my money through Zelle too, right?
Yeah,
like the first of the month, almost always every payment is there. Right. Sometimes like the 23rd of the prior month, they're sending me the rent. With a property manager, you have to wait till like the 20th of the following month to get your money. Yeah. So I think honestly, like to cut this whole thing short, it's like if you really want to get into property, like self-management, find a good state that's like a red state that's like you're not stuck in a bunch of regulatory mumbo jumbo. Like Pennsylvania is a good example of that because you're always getting like these. I'm always getting shit from like the local boroughs. Like they're always wanting money from, and then there's
tenant management and stuff like that. Like if you kick them out, a blue state is not a landlord friendly state. So if you
No,
go to
yeah.
some place that's a landlord friendly, like self management's super easy. I think that's the big takeaway.
Yeah, I mean, like look at 1 in 100 tenants is going to be difficult, but mostly they're just good people,
Yeah.
man. They're your
Yeah.
customers,
For
okay?
sure.
I mean,
Treat 'em
if
well.
you're in business, like if you have a business, a store or some kind of business, like are you afraid of your customers? Do you hate your customers? No, your customers aren't usually difficult.
Yeah.
Occasionally there's one, but most of them are just nice people.
Buy a good house in a red state, and you can go a long ways with
Yeah.
self management. Yeah, for sure. All right, cool. Let's move on to the next one here. Thanks, Michael. Let's see. Lou asks, "Hey, Jason, I hope you're doing well. I currently live in California, and part of me would like to invest in real estate here because my family is in real estate slash mortgage and
I think we just
construction."
covered that.
Yeah. In other words, I have a small edge locally. Specifically, I am looking around the Sacramento area. As you know, RV ratios aren't great in California. It's not a super landlord friendly, but are there any circumstances where it might make sense? The niche I've been thinking through is buying SFR and adding an ADU. Can you explain what that is?
That's an accessory dwelling unit. And California, in order to ease its housing crunch in an attempt to do that, has made it much easier to add these accessory dwelling units in the backyard.
Oh, okay.
Right?
It's kind of a forced equity play then, huh? So,
Yeah, and they'll allow you to rent them out and stuff like that.
okay.
But it's not cheap. You still have all these ridiculous building codes. So putting in a dumb little accessory dwelling unit is expensive affair.
$1 million bucks probably nowadays.
Well, not that much.
Okay,
Yeah,
500,000.
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe
Yeah.
400.
I mean, you could easily spend, I don't know, $500 a square foot for that accessory dwelling unit. Okay.
Yeah. So really, the edge here is he's got family in the business. That's it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't think that's much of an edge.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you have to tell us or ask us what the edge might be there, I don't know.
I will say something though, and I've had her on the show a couple of times, but my aunt, and she's also spoken at a couple of my conferences actually, because she's been there. My aunt owns about 120 units, I think, in Sacramento area. And I've been around with her when I was a kid. I used to go up there and go to the houses, and I just have real estate in my blood because I've been doing it forever, basically. And she's been a real estate investor for decades and decades in Sacramento, old school thinking, obviously. I mean, she's almost like 90 years old now. And I don't think there's any reason to be investing in a market like that. It's very landlord unfriendly. And the thing that kind of happens to people that invest in their own neighborhood is they tend to start taking on the job of handyman and doing everything themselves and spending a lot of time meeting people over at the property and this, that, and the other thing. And I don't want to do any of that stuff. I'm an investor. Okay. Yeah. The only thing I want to kind of get my hands dirty with is a couple of emails or Voxer messages. I do want to do that because I don't want to have a property manager. But that takes like no time. I mean, it's just so easy. And you won't get sucked into it. If you live close by, you tend to get sucked into things that, like that. So that's another reason. And plus, that market, the rent to value ratios are terrible. It's, blue state, tenant friendly, landlord unfriendly, especially Sacramento being the capital. That's like the worst of the blue. Okay.
Are there any
got a bunch of people that work for the government there, and oh my God, that's one of the worst areas.
Assuming you don't want to get into like the cash flow hustle, is there like we're traditionally real estate investing wise, but is there like a flipper wholesale buying kind of opportunity for California? I mean, people obviously do well in real estate in California. Like, what do they do?
Yeah, I mean, if you're flipping homes, a higher priced home is going to have usually a higher margin on the flip. So that's good. If you want to go around but the thing people have to understand is that's not real estate investing. That's a real estate business. So if you want to go into the real estate business, that's what being a flipper is. And that's fine. It's great. But it's a business.
Good point.
Right. So expect that to take as much time as running a business does. That's not investing anymore.
Not very passive or semi-passive. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good point. Very good point.
And be prepared to deal with contractors and get ripped off and have them not do the job right. And sometimes you're going to have to go to court with them, actually fairly often.
Well, his family's in construction, so he's got
that's better. You have an advantage. Yeah.
So maybe the flipping wholesale buying business aspect of this is where you might be able to make your mark, not so much the cash flow side of things, like, or what we're doing, single family homes.
So what I would do with that strategy, like if this person wants to be an active business in the real estate business, right? Do a real estate business locally in Sacramento and use the money you make from that business to buy properties for investment in good linear markets.
Good idea.
That's
that cash.
Very good dual strategy there.
Good idea. That makes sense. Yeah. Okay, cool. Let's move on to the next one here. Right, Texas Jow. Hey, hello, Jason. I recently ran across this article and thought it was interesting. Any thoughts? It seems pretty crazy if some of this is coming to fruition. Well, Jow, I don't think we're going to read the whole article here. In the last decade, in less than a decade, you won't be able to afford a home in these cities. Okay, well, I'll click on it. All right, clicked on it. Let's see what we have here. Hey, that looks familiar. So in the next decade, you won't be able to afford a home in these cities. Knoxville, Missouri, Columbia, Missouri, Lake Havasu. These are all like linear markets. Maybe somewhat hybrid. Tucson. Lakeland.
Yeah, Lakeland. Well, I mean, we do business in Lakeland a little bit.
Do you? Yeah. Well, I don't know. I mean,
so what's the question here?
Any thoughts? What are your thoughts? Do you think these areas will be too expensive in the future to buy a home?
No,
because everybody's buying homes there now.
I think these are mostly linear markets. I don't know about like Havasu though. That's probably kind of expensive. You know how I called it Lake Havasu?
I like that. It's a good play. Yeah.
Everybody's drunk and having sex.
Yeah, it's a good time to watch people. If you're saying no people watching, though, you just hang out there and watch the debauchery in real time.
It is definitely debauchery.
Yeah, but I guess the big takeaway there is, let's see, did I pass up this? Okay, is this Lou? California. No, where did I go? Oh, yeah, here we go. Yeah, I would say the big takeaway here is like those obviously look like linear markets today. Maybe in 10 years, they're hybrid markets or cyclical markets, assuming that they continue the trajectory of growth the way they are.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. I mean, look at, you might not want to look. Obviously, titles of articles are all clickbait, right?
Sure.
This one's no exception. But what they didn't say in that title is in less than a decade, you might not be able to afford a home anywhere. Yeah. They picked certain markets, but it might apply to pretty much every market.
Compared to what, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Let's move on to the next one here. Francis asks, hey, I feel fortunate to ask a question from a professional like you, and I truly appreciate your feedback. I'm worried about the investment below, and I'm thinking of dumping it. My daughter bought a home in 2021 at a 3% mortgage rate near a railroad track, and the train runs through about 4 times during the day, maybe 1 to 2 at night. And you could hear it approximately 3 to 4 minutes. It's loud. The home's in Auburn, California, a small Northern California town located in a very mature, picturesque community near many amenities like lakes, trails, and 20 minutes from a large city. It's a beautiful community with a custom 3 to 4 bedroom, 2-bath home with lush landscapes. Daughter's property backs up to an HOA with creek and lots of foliage where deer are spotted from time to time. Train, while hidden a quarter mile away, sits on a hill. You can't see it, but you can sure hear it. So question, daughter doesn't plan to live there for more than 5 years and feels she'd be able to rent it with no problem. I always thought living near a train that you can hear very well when it's active brings down the property value at least 10%. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Thank you. And then here's some specifics on the home. So 3-bed, 2-bath, 1,800 square feet.
You know what they didn't talk about though? It's amazing, all these statistics. Okay, so paid 3% mortgage, paid $557. What's it worth now, I wonder?
In Auburn, yeah.
Probably more than that, but
it's probably worth more.
Sure. Yeah. So look, a property by a train track is obviously, that's got an issue, but in a market where there's a lot of choice of homes for sale, it's hard to unload a property like that. In a hot market, even though it's going to be lower priced, right? Yeah. But in a hot market, people are going to buy it because there's not going to be anything else to buy.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and when you do sell that property, you have got to have that property in perfect condition. You've got to compensate in whatever ways possible for the railroad track. And in the MLS description, you can use the old realtor trick, close to transportation, as though it's a benefit.
Oh, that's awful.
That's what they would always say.
I was thinking the whole time I was reading that, I'm like, I would keep the house. I'd figure out a way of soundproofing the place so that the train isn't a distraction when you're inside the home, right? Like there's certain windows you can buy for the place. It's going to block a lot of the sound. There's insulation you could add to the roof. Yep. There's ways of, and that might just require a consultation with a acoustic engineer. And
that, and you can do. It'll help a little bit with plants and a water feature in the backyard and that kind of thing. But nothing's going to totally solve the problem.
Yeah, you're just gonna have to figure out ways of mitigating that sound. Else, but Auburn's a nice little place.
Yeah,
and it seems like a quaint little area to like have a place. Just got to fix it.
They've already got Anderson windows, so they might have good windows already.
Maybe, yeah. It's maybe worth just getting a little survey from somebody who's good with acoustics and sound and see what they have to say.
Yeah. Well, the other interesting thing is, when are we going to see more of these tech applications? I mean, our noise canceling headphones and stuff, right? They can do that outside with big speakers and stuff, right?
That's
that
one.
Basically read the frequency of the train,
spit it out,
and then they flip it, right?
Inverse,
so
yeah. 180 degrees out, cancels right out.
Yep.
Good white noise or sustaining noises like train noise is a good example of something that would work. All right, so what do we have here? Okay, cool. Let's move on to the next one. That's a reply from Jao. Thanks. Oh, no, I guess another question. Thanks, guys. Appreciate your content. I had a hypothetical situation I was going to get an opinion on. I have a primary home I purchased in summer of 2021 at 2.125% on a 15-year fixed. Boy, that's awesome.
Oh, I'm so jealous.
Hot market in a prime neighborhood in Fort Worth. I was running the numbers and debating that if I chose to buy another primary home in the next 2 or 3 years, I could rent this current home and probably barely break even, but probably would assume at least $5,000 a year in losses for vacancies and repairs due to it would be a pretty.
Well, I wonder what the price of that home is. Like, I'd like to know the rent to value ratio. I mean, I'm surprised you couldn't make money on that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it is a 15-year loan, so it's got a higher payment.
Right.
But man, I would keep that because that mortgage is such a good asset. I would not sell that property probably.
Yeah, just figuring that out would make a lot of sense.
They say they have $160,000 in equity, but they don't say the value of the house.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we could use a couple of more figures there. The value of the house.
I'd love to know the value and what you think the market rent is, but the likelihood is I'm going to say keep that because that mortgage asset is pretty powerful.
Yeah. And if you can assume this repair bill, assuming that's probably on the high end, $5,000.
I mean, we don't know the condition of the property or anything, so
Leverage to see. Okay, a big chunk of free equity. Yep. Leverage. So I do have some free cash to help. I have about 160 grand on equity. I put 25% down. It just seems that All right, we've covered it.
My look at
try to keep it if you can.
That mortgage is a giant asset, so. Keep that mortgage. Don't let anybody take that mortgage away from you, and don't pay it off.
Try not to pay it off. Yeah.
Don't pay it off. I mean, you're going to pay it off 15 years anyway because you have to. But
yeah. Hey, have you ever looked into I don't know much about rent to own stuff, but it just seems like if you can get into a long-term rent to own contract with somebody and they put down a down payment and they're paying it over years, 27 years, 30 years, whatever they can afford, and they're doing their own repairs and stuff. Like, have you ever looked at it from that angle? The rent to own aspect, as opposed to
that's one of the things we teach in our Empowered Investor Pro group, and our mentoring group is the rent to own model because that can be good. You can really reduce your involvement, your hassle factor with your portfolio, but it all just depends on the terms, right? Yeah. How much is the house? How much is the rent? What's the price you agreed on for the future, et cetera, et cetera. So.
Got it.
So, it's all just subject to the deal.
Okay. All right. Gloria asks, good afternoon, Jason. I'd like to get into real estate investing to diversify my portfolio, but George says we're in a housing bubble and there will be opportunities in the future at better prices. So George is sitting in T-bills for now, and he makes that sweet 5% risk-free. So what do you think about that? It seems like most real estate investments these days are cash flow negative, given the cost to rent is much less than the cost to buy. And with things like student loans restarting, it doesn't seem like now is a good time to buy anything when I can get a 5% risk-free. Best wishes, Gloria.
Yeah. Well, if you're basically what you're getting is you're probably getting a negative 8% risk-free return.
Unreal.
Because inflation is much higher than the government tells us, of course.
Right. So
if we assume it's 13%, and remember, you got to pay taxes on that 5%. So really, you're getting a return about 2.75 is your real risk-free return, and then you take inflation out of that, so you're really losing about 8%.
Yeah.
So if you don't mind losing 8% as you wait. And if you're sure you're going to be right, that the market is going to decline and somehow conditions are going to get worse, then lose your 8% for a couple more years and
see what happens.
Hope that you're right, that there's, the crash people are waiting for. I don't think you're going to be right, but we'll see. Maybe I'll be eating my hat. Who knows?
Okay, cool. Moving on. Thank you, Gloria. Let's see. Elena asks, "Hey, Mr. Hartman and Gene, hope this finds you well. Mr. Hartman, what do you think about Margaritaville Resort in Fort Myers Beach? Will building that resort bring up the price? Will building that resort bring up the prices of real estate in Fort Myers?" There you go.
I can't speak to that specifically. I just don't know enough about Fort Myers or how close or what the properties are around the new Margaritaville. I like overall, maybe, probably, but
why would it though?
I don't know. Some of that might be priced into the market already. Sellers knew that was coming and may have already adjusted for that, and buyers may have already been willing to pay the sellers higher prices. It could be priced in, right? So I don't know. I don't know enough about the local market to answer.
All righty, cool. Moving on. Thank you, Elena. Bobby Bowe. Say, Mr. Hartman, it seems you're still bullish on single-family housing. I totally get all of your arguments, but it seems like there's been some upper limit to demand that would cause the prices to plateau. I myself own my home and a few rentals, but I have many friends who did not buy houses before they went parabolic, and several have made drastic life decisions. One moved across country to go back to living with their parents. One moving out of the country to become an expatriate. One broke off an engagement because his fiancée was set on buying a home and starting a family, but on his $150K salary, that would have been easily possible in 2019. Now it's a fantasy.
Isn't that crazy how that changed? Yeah.
And what I think is the most tragic, a female friend, unmarried, but in a serious relationship, opted to get an abortion because she didn't want to raise a kid in a studio apartment.
Oh my God. Can
that's
you believe that?
Sacrilege right there. That's awful.
That is,
that's a shitty excuse too. That's the dumbest reason to not have a kid. Wow. Okay, even if this housing market crashed tomorrow, none of these people would be lining up to buy homes anytime soon. There seems to be a window in people's lives in their 30s and early 40s where they want to become homeowners. In their 20s, they want to rent and party. In their 50s and 60s, they're looking forward to retiring and traveling. Just wondering if you have any concern that this might put downward pressure on prices. I'm thinking of selling off my small portfolio of single-family homes to sit in T-bills at 5%. The T-bills would cash flow better than what I'm getting on rent at the moment because I only raised rents 8% each year over the last few years, but the housing value has doubled. I don't know how that makes any sense, but
the T-bills, remember, the cash flow is not as good as you think because you got to pay taxes on that interest.
Yeah, that's capital gains tax on top, and it's merely just hedging inflation a little bit. It's not.
Yeah, and you're going to pay capital gains tax on the sale because you're not going to buy anything else and do an exchange. So God no.
Yeah.
You already know George's audience has labeled me the permabull, so I guess I'll take it. But I'm not a permabull. I'm just saying that right now I'm not bearish like all the people who read Zero Hedge all day long. Okay. And listen, Fight Club's one of my favorite movies. I like Tyler Durden.
It'd be interesting to learn a little bit more about your stock or your single-family portfolio of single-family homes and why you're not cash flowing so well. Like, what's going on there? Like
Yeah, I
how'd you
would
end up in
try to
that spot?
optimize that.
Yeah.
Maybe, that's true. What I mean, we don't know what the prices are. Did he say what markets they're in?
No,
Yeah,
no.
yeah,
So
they
yeah,
might be in like cyclical markets like California or some expensive
yeah,
market.
and in that case, maybe that's the point. Like maybe it's like get out, hit the pause button, keep your cash and dry powder, which is in T-bills, and then when an opportunity comes along to pick something else up that helps you sleep at night, then do that, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I would say, what I would say, Gene,
Hmm.
if they don't cash flow because they're in cyclical, expensive markets that are suffering more downward pressure on price, then do 1031 exchange and get good linear
Good
markets.
idea. That's a good
Yeah,
point. Yeah, maybe you can consolidate to a nice duplex or whatever you have going on.
yeah. The
Simplify.
problem is we just don't have enough information on a lot of these. That's why
Yeah.
I wish, people would come on live with us.
Yeah, we got to figure that one out, Jason. Maybe
Some
with
back
you
and
in,
forth.
in general, maybe we can do kind of a StreamYard social where everybody
Yeah, if
hops
we
in
can
on the
bring them
call.
on
Yeah,
to
yeah.
ask their question, like that'd be awesome. Yeah,
We'll do that on the next one with
yeah.
you and
Let's
see how that
definitely
goes.
do that. Yeah,
And what I might do is I might make this one open to the public in general with you, and then
yeah,
but our members have access to the StreamYard link so they can participate in the collective group that we're
sure.
talking. So I don't know. I'll figure it out for the
Sure
next one.
thing. Well, I guess we have to say the housing market has now murdered at least one person. It's that kid that was aborted.
Yeah,
Isn't that
that
sad?
sucks, man. It's just a sad God. That's just a sad excuse to have
I
an
mean,
abortion.
think about it. We're like, what? How overly entitled must that woman have been, right?
Mm,
To do that. She's in a relationship, right?
yeah.
And she aborts a child because she doesn't want to raise the kid in an apartment. I mean, first off, you don't know what your future is going to be. You might win the lottery tomorrow. Your
Mm,
folks might die. You might inherit some money. Like you might, stumble onto some great business idea, and you might be super rich in a year or two. Like
man.
nobody knows, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that's just unbelievable to me that someone's life literally ended because I couldn't get a big enough house. I mean, are you kidding? Look at people in other countries having kids. They live on dirt floors, okay,
Yeah.
in huts. I mean, what does that say about, the future of humanity? Or like none of us would have been here if that was the attitude. Can you imagine if our ancestors said, oh my gosh, I got to live in a modern high rise condo with a big screen TV to have a kid,
Yeah.
or I'm not going to do it. And the year is 1492.
It's crazy, man. I lived in a 26-foot trailer with my parents and like three siblings up until I was like 16 years old.
Yeah.
I had no choice, and they didn't either, and they didn't abort all their kids leading up to that point. They were just like,
Yeah.
we did what we had to do.
I mean, I lived in a 1-bedroom apartment in shitty Mar Vista, California with my mom who slept on a convertible sofa and gave me the bedroom. Okay. And Mar Vista back then, if you know the area, was
Yeah.
a really bad area.
Yeah.
Okay. It's better now because it's become gentrified and expensive because it's in LA. But back then it was not nice.
Yeah.
Okay. It was a trash area.
That's a tough one, man.
with
People
high
need
crime.
to come up with better questions or excuses, I think.
Yeah.
Anyway, okay, moving on. Alexis asks, Aloha, what is your real estate forecast on limited spaces like space places like Hawaii? Things
Yeah.
are slowing
Well,
down. Yeah, go
Yeah,
for it.
that's kind of the same answer before, when Luke Grumman made that comment, that article was
Yeah,
posted in
beachfront
the thread
properties,
here.
et cetera, et cetera. High
Yeah,
desirables.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's all great, but the problem is it's just too expensive and it never pencils. You can't hold it. You can't sustain the investment long enough to wait for the appreciation, right? Those trophy areas and trophy properties, hey, man, they're awesome, right? But they just don't work from a numbers perspective. They essentially become a program where you pay for the property when you buy it, and then you keep paying for it because you can never get the income to work, right? Because it's too expensive. There's no good rent to value ratio. And don't think you're going to fix that with Airbnb either, because we all know what's happening there and it's a big
Yeah.
bust. Okay. And so, it's
Worth, yeah. So,
you're going to
So-
pay a lot more for that property than the sticker price. I'll put it that way.
yeah, a lot of people sold at the high and are waiting for prices to drop. But I'm wondering if we will ever see a noticeable difference here. It's a toughie. Yeah, timing markets is not something we should be doing. And it
Yeah.
sounds like a lot of people are trying to sell at the top, and they're like, wait a minute.
Can you imagine I mean, every market timer thought they had totally won the lottery in 2020.
Yeah.
When COVID was the thing, everybody thought, "Oh, for sure I'm going to be right this time." I'm timing the market. I'm keeping my powder dry, man. I'm going to wait and there's going to be a crash. The opposite occurred.
Yeah.
And now they lost, the ship left the dock, the train left the station, and those people missed out. And you know what? Those are the jealous people who keep saying the crash is coming. Like, you want to convince me the crash is coming? Show me the data. I mean, and the data you got to show me is a bunch of distressed homeowners. Data's simply not there.
Yeah. We'll have to wait and see. Yeah. Time will tell, I guess. May never happen. May happen. Probably will happen at some point. Just
of course it'll happen sometime.
When? 10 years from now, 5 years from now, 2 days from now,
look,
when?
When inventory isn't 460,000 homes and when inventory is 700,000 homes, going to 1 million, going to 1.5 million for sale, we got a problem. Okay? That's the time you can tell me that the market is crashing.
Yeah, that's a great way of looking at it. Well, with that being said, we have closed out we've answered all the questions. You've answered all the questions. Right. So we are done for today, sir. Thank you so much for a great Q&A, good conversation. Right. And everybody stay tuned for George. He's going to be up next here in a couple of hours, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So hop in there and say hi to him and get your questions in for him before he closes that thread. We have Lynn Alden tomorrow, so we're going to be talking macro and investing with Lynn tomorrow at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And then we have our new little entrepreneurs roundtable that we do every Wednesday, where all the business guys in the group get together and we just talk about business stuff. And that's been really fun. And then that's it for the week, I think, until George again on Sunday. So we'll leave it at that. You guys, thanks for everything. Jason, it's great seeing you, buddy. I'm glad you made it back from your awesome European trip safely. Coco looks like she's happy, so good job.
The dog traveled to a whole bunch more places with me.
Right on.
Pretty good.
Right on, buddy. So what do you have going on for the rest of the week? What's on your radar, chopping block?
Just busy doing my thing. I'm going to do a live interview with John Williams tomorrow in Boca Raton. And he's a big YouTuber as well. You might know his name. This is John Williams is the YouTube channel.
Okay.
And so doing that and, just working, kind of catching up on a lot of stuff that needed attention when I was gone.
Gotcha. And also, if you're in the market for real estate, single family home real estate, go to jasonhartman.com. Check out Jason's stuff. A lot of things offer.
Actually, Gene, I should mention, we have a virtual event coming up. And some of the Rebel capitalists might want to attend. It's on Zoom, so it's super easy to attend. Cool. And you know what? I'll just, if I can easily pull it up on the screen here, I'll just pull it up for you. It's, here it is. Let me just get there. It'll take me 2 seconds. Here it is. Okay.
We can get an email sent out for you too as well if you want to send me the info.
Yeah, and here is there you go. So it's July 21st and July 22nd. It's on Zoom, so it's super easy to attend. It's super cheap to attend. Go and register, jasonhartman.com, and join us for that virtual event. It'll be like Friday evening for a couple hours, and then Saturday morning, afternoon. I'm talking Eastern time, but it's a nice workable event for any time zone, pretty much. Cool. So join us for that. Just jump on Zoom. It's a small group. I'll be there, with you for about 7 hours to answer all your questions and all kinds of stuff. We'll have some of our team members presenting as well. So I think that'd be a great event. jasonhartman.com for our live virtual Creating Wealth event.
Cool. And that's all around single family homes, investing in single family real estate across
or small apartments too. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Cool. Yeah. Cool. Like 4plexes, 6plexes or
mostly.
Okay.
But we have people that do some apartments here and there.
Okay. Cool. Love it. All right, buddy. All right. Thanks everyone for hanging out and submitting your questions for Jason. And we'll see you tomorrow with Lynn Alden. So take care, everyone. And bye-bye.
Happy investing.
Happy investing. See ya.
Bye.